Danita, your host for Baggage Claim, Unpack Your Bags with Dr. Danita. We're back for season 2. It's season 2 already. And you know that I often say that on this carousel of life, picking up baggage is sometimes really unavoidable. But unpacking those bags becomes a choice. So I'm coming on live every single week, and I'm going to offer those educational tips and emotional health tips, but just remember that they are in no way a replacement for professional counseling. If you're finding that those bags that you're carrying are way too heavy for you to carry, definitely reach out for help. You can find me on my Facebook page at Dr. Danita Thompson. I'm on LinkedIn, I'm on Instagram, and don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel to catch those replays. All right, so I'm ready to join you live. Remember to hit like and share. You want everyone to know that I'm going on. Like and share, and let's get started. Well, good evening, everyone. Welcome to Baggage Claim, Unpack Your Bags with Dr. Danita. This is season 2, episode number 5, and the topic on tonight is Till Death Do Us Part, and this is part 2 from last week's live, Till Death Do Us Part. I'm excited about tonight. I shared on last week that tonight I was going to be hosting my husband of nearly 39 years. But before we get to tonight's episode, I just want to share, do what we do. Like and share. If you are a fan of Baggage Claim, go ahead and clap up in the comments. And if this is your first time joining us, let us know where you're joining us from. We make this very interactive, so what we would like for you to do is be interactive. I have my phone here and I'm watching, trying to make sure that I see your comments or any questions that you may have. So please go ahead and like and share. This episode is going to be epic, and so I'm looking forward to it. Like and share. If you are catching the replay, let us know. Just type in replay. Go ahead to my YouTube channel at Dr. Danita Thompson and subscribe. Hit that notification bell so that you can receive all of the notifications as the lives are uploaded. So we're going to get started on tonight. The topic again is Till Death Do Us Part. You good?
I am good.
You need some water?
No.
You sure? Okay.
Very good.
So we talked last week about marriage being one of those difficult relationships to navigate, and other relationships, you kind of get natural space, but in marriage, you sleep together, you pay bills together, you do laundry together, you eat dinner together, you make decisions together, and so it just takes a whole lot more navigating than your friendships or your coworkers or relationships with your siblings or relationship with your parents. And so we're going to talk tonight. Last week we had an amazing couple on, and they shared some of their journey navigating marriage. And I specifically chose a younger couple and then wanted to bring us on as an older, a little more seasoned couple to kind of give people a balance of understanding how marriage is navigated at different stages of life. And so I just want to put in a little disclaimer before we get started. What we're sharing tonight is our lived experience. And in reality, our lived experience is not very uncommon to what people experienced back when we got married and even experiencing today. But what we're sharing are the choices that we made. And it is in no way to say that, if you didn't make the same choice or you didn't take the same route, there's no judgment here. This is what we chose to do, and it was our experience. Some people may say, I would have taken the highway so long ago. Again, what people choose to do is what people choose to do. And so I just want to put that disclaimer out there. And so we're going to get started.
Okay.
This is Arnell, my 1982 sweetheart, 1979 sweetheart, 1982 when we actually tied the knot. Let's just start and talk a little bit about how, just to lay the foundation for our relationship, talk a little bit about how, you laughing already, how we met, and yeah, let's just take it from there.
Well, we met on a bus outing.
A bus trip, yeah.
A bus trip.
That's,
the church version is a bus outing.
Yeah.
So we went on a bus outing. She had on a white long sleeve shirt with this was the style then, I guess. It was a pair of brown Farmer John pants, and I was a country boy. I don't believe I ever saw a light skinned girl.
Yeah.
But I'm just kidding about that. But I'm just saying that I had this little light skinned little girl that was very she wasn't flirtatious. She was very friendly and open, and so I believe she came and sat by me, or anybody sitting here. I think it was I said it, right? Was anybody sitting here, or was it you?
I may have.
Yeah,
I
she
can't
may
remember.
have.
Yeah. I don't know.
And so we began to talk, and for the most part, we became friends, and we would see each other on a Sunday, and how you doing? And then we decided to go out on our first date,
Mm-hmm.
and that was a no-go because I had to be updated on the where in New York City how they dressed, their attire, I should say. So I dressed that day to go to Coney Island. I had on a pair of, if you know what gabardine pants are, gabardine with white stitching down the side, and I had on a pair of patent leather square-toed shoes and orange terry cloth shirt. So when I stepped out to the door, she said, no, we're not going to Coney Island today. Let's go to Delancey Street and get you some clothes. So we got some sneakers and some jeans, and she made sure I was in style before we began to date. And that's how it all started.
Yeah, and so for the record, when we're talking about dating, whatever we would call dating, I was 15 and he was 18. And well, by the time I went to Coney Island, I think I was 16 because my mother had this rule that we couldn't go out with a boy unless we were 16. I don't know what this magic number of 16, because when I met him I was 15 and a half, but I had to literally be 16 in order to go out. And so
the first 6 months was on her couch with her mother looking in the kitchen. And that's where we did most of our dating for. I was allowed to stay maybe an hour and a half.
And we saw each other at church. Church events and things like that. So, yeah, so that's pretty much laying the foundation for how we met. And then when I was 18, we decided that it was time to tie the knot at the ripe old age of 18. And you were 21, right?
And just to interject, I proposed to my lovely wife on the phone. On the phone with quarters in my pocket. And we were actually probably arguing about sex.
I can't.
And we got into an argument, and I just said, well, why don't you marry me? And she said, okay.
That speaks to the juvenile.
Oh.
I mean, we're really being transparent here tonight. That is so embarrassing that was the proposal, right?
Proposal.
That really, that speaks to how childish we were at 18 and 21. But look, we're here to be real tonight, and so you're gonna get not always the unedited version, but
A little
as close as we can. How about that? So so we decided that we would get married. Oh my gosh, I told my mom she was fit to be tied. I think she probably cried. She probably had a couple of internal heart attacks, and then she cried for weeks, saying, what is your, like, no, you can't do this. You're only 18. You have a future. You have this. You're supposed to go to school. You're supposed to, and all of what she was saying was what any mom would say to their child who comes to them and says they want to get married at 18. But we were dead set on it. And so my mom, I mean, she had many things that she tried to rationalize with me. So, for example, my dad was disabled, and we were getting the the SSI checks, the disability checks. And so my mother would give us, me and my sister, the check, and she had taught me how to manage my money, and she put the money in the bank, and she was, teaching me how to budget and things like that. And my father passed when I was 17, and so we started getting his portion of the money. And so I would have gotten that money until I finished college, but getting married, that money ended. And she's like, you can save this monthly, check that you get, and you can prepare yourself for marriage after college. Just bank the money. And so I was like, no, I want to get married now. I'll forfeit the money. And so her last ditch effort, she said, okay, I'm going to send you to the pastor. And if the pastor sanctions this, then I'm going to take my hands off it and we'll go forward with it. She was so sure that the pastor would say, no way. And what did he say?
He said, you have my blessings.
He said, you have my blessings. He said,
do you love her?
Do you love her? And you said, yes sir.
I do.
And then he looked at me and he said, do you love him? And I said, yes sir. And he says, you have my blessings.
So that was premarital counseling.
That was it. That was all that we got in laying the foundation for a lifetime together. And so what I titled that a year or so ago was Our Recipe for Disaster. And that's going to be a book, y'all. I need y'all to give me some encouragement, because I've been in my mind writing this book for the last 2 years, but haven't gotten anything on the paper except the title, A Recipe for Disaster. So I need a little bit of encouragement so that we can get this book written and published. So, Our Recipe for Disaster, when we think about it, we were completely unprepared. We were way too young.
Right. Some of your mother was right.
Yes, absolutely. She was right, completely right. We were absolutely way too young. We weren't financially stable. I mean, we were 18. I literally I did 1 year of college, but I was working, but not making enough money to, for us to actually do life together. What else? We didn't know how to communicate.
Well, and being said all that, I remember her mother taking me home alone one night. And
You love to tell this story. I can't. You just love to tell a story. You jump in the gun. I'm talking about how we weren't prepared.
To say she was kind of right, and I was probably a year in, we were realizing that this is crazy. And so she was taking me home. Danita had went home early from church, so she was giving me a ride home, and she looked me square in the face, and she said, I don't like the way you treat my daughter. And now usually I'm the South Carolina guy, yes ma'am, no ma'am. I don't know what got into me that day, but I just looked her straight in the eye and said, you can have her back then. And so she almost ran off the highway. And so I the next morning I leave for work around 7 o'clock. She was there around 6:30 in the morning, and she had a sweet potato pie, all prepared just for me. And we never ever had another crossword, never, until this day, until the day she passed. And so.
So you're tying that into us being unprepared.
Unprepared.
Or you just wanted to get that story in?
I just wanted yeah, you're all right. You can have her back.
But at any rate, we had no communication skills. We had no understanding of developing, or agreeing upon expectations for marriage. We didn't talk about goals. All we knew was that we were going to have a job, work every day, and have some babies.
No romancing skills.
We had no understanding of how to develop intimacy, how to connect emotionally. We both had issues, father wounds, daddy issues. We came into it a mess. Let's just say that. And so we were just completely emotionally immature, not prepared. And then the heavyweight was that you were addicted to porn. And unbeknownst to me. And so life, the first 13 years, we could say, was equivalent to a shipwreck. No, you said the Titanic.
The Titanic, yeah. That's even better.
Yeah, it was just bad. It was bad. And people get to the place, where they say, "Oh, I just can't take it anymore. We've grown apart. I love you as a friend, and but I'm not. I just can't do this." And we thought that, and we said that many times. That porn was wreaking havoc, and we didn't even know how much havoc it was wreaking. But the fact that we didn't have any shared common goals, we had no dreams together. We didn't have good communication. You wanted a simple life. I wanted to be on a locomotive and moving. And so our boat was quickly capsizing. Would you agree?
I agree.
Yeah. And so when you think about capsizing, usually a boat capsizes if, it takes a quick turn, or, the weather is inclement or something like that. But I was reading, and there was, it's one definition of a capsized boat. It said that it's too heavy. There's too much baggage, and it's too much weight in the boat. And so when I began to think about us, we had way too much baggage to even consider getting married. But now we're a few years in, and the boat was sinking, and then it just flipped over. And even though the boat flipped over, I was reading, and it said that a suggestion when you're capsized is to hold on to something sturdy as long as you can. And I thought, wow. And I'm talking now looking back, right? And I'm thinking, wow, we really did hold on. And what was our sturdy thing? We held on to...
regardless of what we went through, I thought that we were still kind of friends. We argued, but I think the church, going to church and having responsibilities, being loyal to ministry and putting on a happy smile, we were kind of forced to be linked and in ministry and just different things. Other than that, vacations for the kids. So it was this happy smile face that that we put on when things underneath or behind the scenes are not good. And it's like the big elephant in the room. We don't talk about it, but we were literally kind of separated in the same house, but not enemies, not volatile, not violent, not cursing each other, having a certain amount of respect for each other, and amongst our friends, nobody knew anything.
Right. I think the other part of the sturdy thing was that we had made a decision very, I think we made a decision very early on that divorce wasn't going to be an option. And I don't know if we made the decision that divorce wasn't going to be an option because we were making a healthy, conscious decision, but it was more like
The backlash.
the backlash that we would have gotten, or the we knew you couldn't do it, or now we have kids, or what would we do
What
if we
would
had
my
kids,
parents
like,
say?
or what would our parent, or just
What
so it
the
wasn't
church
really a
gonna say,
healthy decision that divorce isn't an option, but it sustained us. What would God say, if we did this? And I'm not saying that people who get divorced are under the iron fist of God. I'm not saying that. I'm saying what we were taught at that time and what guided us, I should say. And so it sustained us, even though we were, I would say, living in I think like hell. It was bad. I can't say enough. So now we're into year like 13. So the first 13 years, I can say that statistically speaking, we should have been divorced. Long before we got to year 13. But we made that decision to stay in it, and somewhere around year 13, before year 13, you were still in your addiction. You said that started when you were 12?
Yes,
Yeah.
it started when I was 12 years old. It was due to, I feel that it was due to low self-esteem. I had low self-esteem about myself. I was probably the smallest kid in the class with thick glasses, and I had to have false teeth at a very young age. I lost my permanent teeth as soon as I got them.
Yeah, you got it knocked out, right?
Got my teeth knocked out, and parents couldn't afford, nobody could afford implants, even if they had them. But I didn't get teeth and probably until around 15 or 16. And by then, my self-esteem was shot, and I'm in the middle of life as a teenager, and so it made me socially awkward because I wouldn't smile, and I wouldn't associate with people, and so if I was an introvert, I guess you'd say. I became an introvert and just dabbed in music. But one day I had access to I still see the magazine right now. It's a Penthouse magazine, and that became my outlet for low self-esteem. And if you know anything about pornography, it can take you much further than you want to go, which pornography led to prostitutes. And this is where I was getting my confidence, or building my low self-esteem, because the exchange of sex for money and the building of confidence. A prostitute will tell you you're the best thing in the world if you're paying the money. And so that was basically the exchange, and the exchange was really low self-esteem for cash, for money. And the funny thing is, as I told my wife, I used to see everybody that I looked up to in the same area. I was introduced to 42nd Street by someone I should have looked up to, and I would see all walks of life, from my age, young age, 25, 26 to 70, and people that I looked up to. So it was just like Danita said, it was hell, and it became just a part of my life, a second lifestyle, so to speak, that nobody knew about. I get on the organ, watch people shout all over the place, and nobody knew nothing. But as far as church is concerned, my faith, this is where I hung out at the church, and I was a musician, so it was a double lifestyle, and a double lifestyle is always going to destroy you mentally and destroy your relationship.
Yeah. And just as an aside, this baggage claim is not specifically a Christian show, but as we're telling our lived experience, we are Christians, and so
this is where it happened.
This is our lived experience, and so as you were out doing whatever, and I was actually didn't even know. But all I knew was that I was lonely, and that you were coming home 2:00 in the morning, 4:00 in the morning, and I had this little baby, and I just couldn't figure out, like, is this what it's supposed to be? And me having my own daddy issues, and looking for attention, and looking for, that just someone to pay attention to me, I ended up falling into affairs, and so it just got worse and worse. And so when I said earlier that our story is not uncommon, our story really isn't uncommon. People just aren't telling it. And because of where we are today, we made a decision that we were going to help as many people as we could potentially help. And so having this platform to be able to share and to be able to be open and honest and transparent, I just believe that people are going to be able to benefit from hearing a real story about being shipwrecked, being capsized in marriage, just being in the situation in which we were in, and to be able to get to say we're at 39 years and like each other. So I ended up entangled, and then some years later, being in the church, I started getting this conviction thing going on, and I occasionally look back at journals that I have written, was writing at that time, and I remember reading my journal like 20 years later, and it said, if God hadn't convicted me to say this, I'm literally not crazy. I would not be confessing, because I'm not that crazy. And so I remember going through this whole confession thing about where I had been and what I had done. And we don't have time for the whole story, and we are going to put it in that book though. And so when that book comes out, you all will be able to get all of the details. But so when I made this confession, it just started opening up all kinds of confessions, and then you confessed, and it just started this. It was an amazing, like, I say amazing now, it wasn't amazing then. It was very painful. It was earth shattering then, but I'm saying amazing now because we're on this other side. How it just collided. Our life just collided. What I was doing, what he was doing. We came together and just started spilling all. And to me, that was like the most amazing, miraculous thing that could happen in marriage. That we could spill it all out like that. Literally hate each other for a moment, and then start a healing process. The healing process took a long time, and I think it took as long as it did because we didn't know anything about counseling. We didn't know, like, we literally navigated that whole thing by ourselves. It was horrific. It was painful. And it took a long time.
2 years.
2 years, but during those 2 years, it was just like we didn't have anybody to tell us how to navigate this. And so even that to me was a miracle, but I wouldn't suggest anybody try to navigate infidelity and addictions without help. And so then fast forward, we kind of like got past that. We got to the place where we could say that like we are in our healed place, right?
Yes.
And then year 20, we had decided that this is our new journey, and we renewed our vows, and that was 19 years ago.
Amen.
Yeah, that was 19 years ago. And so that didn't solve the issue that we had, that we got married and had absolutely nothing in common. We got married and had absolutely no shared goals. That didn't change that. And so I was still like the locomotive, and he was still wanting to take the simple life route. And neither was wrong. It was just a matter of, this is what I like and that's what he liked, and nobody guided us in the beginning to see, what direction we, want to go in. And so, and at 18, nobody knows what direction they want to go in anyway. And so we still had that part that we needed to deal with. And I was still going to school, climbing this education ladder, and like, what was that like for you?
What was that like for me? As I was saying before, I never had any animosity towards Danita during her school years, because I felt that I was linked to it in a manner that, I worked hard and brought home the money. She never had to worry about benefits for the kids or etc. So I felt that I was a part of her education, of building her education. I never did. That was one thing her mother was always worried about. Is she's not gonna go to school. She's not gonna finish school. And she used to come over the house when Danita had probably 2 or 3 master's degrees, and I used to say, well, what do you think now? And so I as far as how I felt about it, I'm glad that she did what she did. I don't think it, at least it may have been a big elephant in the room as far as our emotional needs being met, and probably our physical needs being met. It was just something that we dealt with. We didn't deal with it. It was just the elephant in the room, because we had no knowledge of what it meant to to compromise for each other, or have this like selflessness towards each other. We were just what we did. She went after hers, and I worked, and that's basically what I was taught to do from my own father, is go to work and take care of your family. And that was is what we got from marriage. That's what was exemplified to me as far as being a husband, or being married, is just to go to work and bring your money home. And so as you can see, that's a recipe for disaster.
Well, yeah, the recipe for disaster was that we just couldn't figure out at that time how to make our differences work. Exactly. And a lot of people, most often opposites attract, but we had more than the opposite issue, attraction. We literally had no shared direction. Right. And so the navigating through that, after we got to the healthy place, after you were no longer going through your addiction and you could think, clearly, then we started getting to the place where, let's build this friendship, because that's one thing that we can say that we had, like, no matter how bad it got. I think you said it earlier, it never, well, just once or twice, there was the calling out of the name, but there wasn't this ongoing cursing each other out and degrading each other. We just lived our separate lives, and we remained friends. And so we had that foundation of friendship. And so what our journey was in terms of navigating the fact that we came to the conclusion that if we had waited probably 10 more years or 5 more years or whatever, we probably wouldn't even pass or cross paths, because we just were very different. We wouldn't even been in the same found ourselves in the
Right.
same spaces, right?
Right.
And so, because we made the decision to stay in the marriage, then we had to decide, what is this going to look like? And we had to get to the place of acceptance. And that's part of the grief process that people go through when either they feel like they made a mistake, or they didn't do, or grieving, not made a mistake, or grieving what they wish they had had. We went through that time of, we wish we had made this decision, we wish we hadn't done this, and we wish we hadn't done that. And so we had to come to this place where we got to a place of acceptance, like, we're friends, and we're going to accept, I'm going to accept who he is, he's going to accept who I am, and we're not going to get in each other's way as to what we both want out of life. And so what that took was the maturity. I'm reading a book called Post-Romantic Stress Disorder, and it talks about how people, once that in love feeling, when people are in love, everything is easy. When people are in love, there's nothing to work on. We just love the way your breath smells, and we love that, even if it's the foulest thing ever. When you're in love, everything is glory. But that's so temporary, because life begins to happen, and as life begins to happen, then you have to begin to grow in mature love. And so it took a long time for us to get to that place of understanding that we are going to choose to love, and that we're going to choose to be friends, and we're going to choose to accept each other for who we are to each other. And so I'm just excited that we got to that place, and that we're able to share this story today. And so I continued to climb this education ladder, and I decided that we overcame what we were able to overcome. We started helping people. We were, counseling couples in our church, and friends would come to us. But I realized that our story wasn't enough to help people, so I decided to go back to school, and I became a marriage and family therapist. And so you were always like my cheerleader when, going to school and everything. But this marriage and family therapist thing became, at times, a bone of contention. What was that like for you after I got my degree and started practicing?
Well, I mean, to be honest, you want the edited version or the real version? But anyway, first of all, don't ever marry. No, I'm just joking. Don't. You can marry a therapist. It's that I learned from her, even when, as I spoke about it earlier with her, that I learned that using her skills just from hanging around with her and talking with her, it helps me with the young men that I often take out when they're having issues or trouble, and I use these skills. So it's a matter of applauding what she does, but at the same time we do get a little loose, and I'll say I don't want to hear the counseling strategy tonight. And so but what we've learned is that we never allow the sun to go down with wrath, or in layman's terms, we're never usually angry when we go to bed at night. We always manage to sit down, and that's the one great thing about using these counseling tools, or the tools that counselors give to you, is that we can sit down and talk and navigate through our situation or whatever caused the argument, and we resolve it, and we move on. And she does have a bit of an advantage. She does, but it's okay, because I've learned how to compromise, and the spirit that we have embraced is to compromise our own feelings or selflessness towards each other, so that one may be brought up in the areas that they need to work on.
That's the part that I appreciate most, that that my profession is respected. Even when we get into disagreements and he says, don't bring me that counseling thing, that's just in the moment, while we are annoyed with each other. But then later, when we actually sit down to talk about what happened, then, I'm able to say, and I usually would say to him, I don't want to tell people in the counseling room things to do to help their marriage, and then I'm not doing them. And so then, we're able to have those conversations and use the skills, that I share with other people. But I do appreciate that you recognize, my, the profession and honor it in that way. And so as we have, we made that journey, and now we say we're on the other side. That's what we say, we're on the other side. There's a lot of things that I'm proud about, because knowing just this part of the story that we have shared in 45 minutes, remember it was 13 years. So we've only shared 45 minutes of it. So when I look back, there are just so many things that I feel very proud and like, wow, we actually survived. We actually made it. Like, we're going to be celebrating 39 years the end of this month. And so when I think about the things that I'm most proud of, I'm proud of the fact that we hung in there. I'm proud of the fact that we made a decision that we were just not going to throw in the towel. And because of that, making that decision, if we had thrown in the towel, I mean, look what we have today, right?
Amen.
Yeah.
What we got.
We're pastors, so he keeps saying amen.
I can't help it.
That's just natural.
I'm sorry, y'all. I know everybody's, but I'm a pastor, so amen.
So amen is the thing. It is so, and this is our story. And so we have the church, we have this whole counseling practice ministry, and I don't know what would have happened if we had decided we're not going to do this. And so I just feel like, wow, we hung in there and God honored it. That's the way in which, we look at it. And so faith has always been foundational for us, and faith will always be. That's the one thing one value that we had that was the same is that our faith was foundational, even when we weren't practicing it like we should. It was still, part of us. And so we have amazing kids. What are some of the things you're proud of?
I am just proud to be here. I mean, to be honest, during my course of addiction, it was during the era of AIDS epidemic and all the other things that could have gone way wrong. And I'm just grateful to be a part of what we call Mending Hearts. It's just our life, what we do. And our hearts were mended. And we just take it and run with it. It's not easy to flip a story, but if you can flip the story and not just run with the negative and run away from the things that you've gone through, and flip it and make something out of it. What I have to say is that I'm just glad to be here, glad to be living, glad to be healthy mentally, spiritually, and partially physically.
He talked about the Mending Hearts, and I've shared this story before, but when we were going through our pain and that was like in the 1990s. We got married in 82, so the height of the pain was in the just before we came to this collision. It was in the mid 1990s, and I kept all of my journal entries, and I was looking back at a journal entry, and I wrote in 1995, I wish he knew, and I was speaking about Arnell, I wish he knew that God could mend our hearts. And fast forward in 2011, when I opened my practice, I had not looked at those journal entries in years. I had not remembered that particular entry. And we ended up naming, I went through a few names, and we settled, he helped me name it, and we settled on Mending Hearts Family Counseling. And then the next year, when we started our church, he says, let's just keep the name because that's what we do. And it was 4 years later that I was looking through, because I was thinking of writing the book then, and I was looking through my journal entries, and I looked, and I was like, oh my gosh, I actually wrote in 1995 that I wish he knew that he could mend our hearts, and we ended up naming the business Mending Hearts and the church Mending Hearts. I just thought, wow, that is absolutely, it was just such a confirmation of the direction, and it was very heartwarming that that was the culmination of that pain that we had experienced. And so we really just wanted to come on and encourage people, because we know, again, that our story really isn't unique. To be honest, there are many people who are, couples. One spouse may be dealing with addiction, the other spouse may be having affairs, and it just really isn't uncommon. Those are the couples that I get that sit on my couch. And so 50% of marriages are still ending in divorce for those reasons, or lack of communication, or I just am not in love anymore. And so we wanted to be able to share our story, just even to say that you can make it. You can make it on broken pieces. You can make it on a piece of a man. You can make it on a shoestring. It just takes a decision to hang on to that shoestring. It takes a decision to hold on or ride that one broken piece until you can get help. I would never suggest you try to do this without getting help. Get help. And so we usually end our lives with, I didn't see any questions tonight, but we usually end our lives with tips. And I was trying to think of, tips that we could give for tonight, but with our story, there are no simple tips. You have got to get help. You have got to go to professional counseling if you are experiencing anything like what we went through. And so I gave more simple tips last week, and I'll give more in my Monday's mental moment. I will give some tips on Monday, but if you are experiencing infidelity, if you're experiencing addictions, if you're experiencing childhood trauma, if you're experiencing, abandonment issue, all of those things will absolutely have a negative impact on your ability to be in a healthy marriage. You need to get professional counseling. And so we're coming close to an end. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. For
sharing, and this is what we do. We overcame, and we just want other people to know that they can overcome as well. And so thank you so much for joining us on tonight, and join me again on Monday for Monday's mental moment. That will be at 7:30, and I just shared 5 minutes of tips and things that you can put in your tool belt. as it relates to whatever topic that was discussed the previous Thursday. And so this Monday will be on marriage. And so next week I'm going to have my friends join me, 3 of my besties, and well, my only 3 besties, and we're going to talk about what about your friends. So join us next Thursday, and don't forget, it's not too late to like and share. I know that you know somebody that can benefit from hearing this story, and it may encourage them to just take their marriage a little bit further. And so like and share, and let us know if you're catching the replay. Thank you so much. Thank you, husband.
You're welcome, sweetie.
My guy, and we'll see you again on Monday. Have a good one.
Good night.